What is the most expensive insult in history? Maybe a declaration of war or a divorce settlement. No. The most expensive insult in history lasted only 10 seconds, and it created a multi-billion-dollar empire. This is the story of how one arrogant comment destroyed a monopoly and gave birth to the wildest supercars the world has ever seen. This is Lamborghini versus Ferrari. To understand this war, we have to go back to Italy in the early 1960s. It was the era of La Dolce Vita. The economy was booming. At the top of the food chain sat one man, Enzo Ferrari. Enzo wasn't just a car manufacturer, he was a god. His cars, with the prancing horse logo, were winning every race at Le Mans and Formula One. He was untouchable, and he knew it. Enzo was famous for his ego. He treated his customers like garbage. He believed that if you bought a Ferrari, you were lucky just to be allowed to drive it. If the car broke down, Enzo would blame the driver, not the machine. But about 20 miles away, in a small town, there lived another man. His name was Ferruccio Lamborghini. Ferruccio was very different from Enzo. He was born into a family of great farmers. He was a man of the earth, a mechanic who got his hands dirty. After World War II, Ferruccio saw a desperate need for agricultural equipment in Italy. He took leftover military parts and started building tractors. And he was brilliant at it. By the late 1950s, Lamborghini Tractors was a massive industrial empire. Ferruccio was extremely rich. Like any wealthy Italian man, Ferruccio loved fast cars. He owned Jaguars, Mercedes, and Maseratis. But naturally, he wanted the best. So, he bought a Ferrari 150 GT. In fact, he bought several of them. It was the status symbol of the elite. But Ferruccio had a problem. He felt the Ferrari was imperfect. It was too noisy. It was too rough. The interior was stripped down like a race car, not a luxury vehicle. But the biggest problem was the clutch. Every time Ferruccio drove his Ferrari fast, the clutch would burn out. He had to take it back to the factory in Maranello repeatedly for repairs. And every time, Ferrari charged him a fortune, and the car would break again a few weeks later. Ferruccio was a mechanic. He didn't just want to pay, he wanted to understand. One day, frustrated, he decided to fix the clutch himself in his own tractor factory. He instructed his mechanics to drop the transmission of his Ferrari. When they opened the car, Ferruccio was shocked. He looked at the broken clutch part and realized he had seen it before. It wasn't a high-tech racing component. It was a standard commercial clutch made by a generic supplier. In fact, it was the exact same clutch Ferruccio used in his own tractors. The only difference, Ferruccio paid 10 lira for this part. Ferrari was charging him 1,000 lira for the same piece of metal. He was being scammed. Ferruccio was furious. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect. He felt that the great Enzo Ferrari was cutting corners and laughing at his customers. So, Ferruccio did something bold. He got into his car and drove straight to Maranello. He demanded to speak to Enzo Ferrari personally. His intention wasn't to start a war. He actually wanted to give Enzo some friendly advice. He wanted to tell him how to fix the cars to make them better. He waited for hours. Finally, Enzo Ferrari walked out. He looked at the short, stocky tractor manufacturer with disgust. Ferruccio said, "Ferrari, your cars are rubbish. The clutch is weak. I use the same parts in my tractors and they work fine. Let me show you how to build a proper sports car." The room went silent. No one spoke to Il Commendatore like that. Enzo turned red. He looked down at Ferruccio and delivered the insult that would change automotive history forever. He said, "Lamborghini, you may be able to drive a tractor, but you will never be able to handle a Ferrari properly. The problem is with the driver, not the car. Go back to your farm." Enzo turned his back and walked away. For most people, being humiliated by the most powerful man in the industry would be the end. But for Ferruccio Lamborghini, it was the beginning. He walked out of that factory with a burning rage. He turned to his wife and said, "I will build a car to show this arrogant man how it is done. I will build a perfect car." Ferruccio didn't just want to build a car, he wanted to destroy Ferrari. But everyone told him he was crazy. Building a car factory from scratch takes years. Designing a V12 engine takes even longer. Ferruccio didn't care. He had millions of dollars from his tractor business and he was willing to burn it all for revenge. He bought a large plot of land in Sant'Agata Bolognese, just 15 miles away from Ferrari's factory. It was a deliberate provocation. Then, he started hunting. He knew that many of Ferrari's engineers were unhappy with Enzo's tyrannical management style. Ferruccio offered them double, sometimes triple their salaries to defect. His biggest catch was Giotto Bizzarini, the genius engineer who had designed the Ferrari 150 GTO. Ferruccio gave Bizzarini a simple instruction: build me a V12 engine, but it must have more horsepower than Ferrari's. The deadline was insane. Ferruccio wanted to unveil the first car at the Turin Motor Show, which was only 4 months away. The team worked day and night. They slept in the factory. The pressure was immense. By the time the Turin Motor Show arrived in 1963, the prototype, the Lamborghini 350 GTV, was beautiful. But there was a huge problem. The engine Bizzarini designed was a masterpiece, but it was too tall. It didn't fit under the hood of the car. The show was starting in hours. They had no time to redesign the chassis. So, Ferruccio did something hilarious. He removed the engine completely. He filled the engine bay with bricks and ceramic tiles to weigh the car down so it would sit at the correct height. Then, he bolted the hood shut. Throughout the entire motor show, Ferruccio stood next to the car, smiling. When journalists asked to see the engine, he politely refused, saying, "Sorry, the hood is sealed for aerodynamic testing." He sold the dream without even having a working car. That is the kind of salesman he was. But soon, the real production cars rolled out, and they were perfect. They were smoother, faster, and more luxurious than any Ferrari. But Ferruccio wasn't done. He wanted a symbol. Ferrari had the prancing horse, a symbol of elegance. Ferruccio was a Taurus born in April. He loved the sport of bullfighting. He saw the bull as a symbol of raw power, aggression, and strength. So, he chose the raging bull as his logo. It was a direct challenge to the horse. And if you look closely, the bull on the logo is in an attack pose, ready to strike. In 1966, Lamborghini delivered the final blow, the knockout punch. They unveiled the Miura. Until that moment, sports cars had their engines in the front, but the Miura placed the V12 engine in the middle, behind the driver, just like a race car. It was revolutionary. It was dangerous. It was the most beautiful thing on four wheels. The press went wild. They coined a new word just for this car: supercar. Before the Miura, there were sports cars. After the Miura, there were supercars. Ferrari looked old overnight. Celebrities, rock stars, and kings started canceling their Ferrari orders to buy a Lamborghini. Frank Sinatra famously said, "You buy a Ferrari when you want to be someone. You buy a Lamborghini when you are someone." Ferruccio had done it. He proved that a tractor driver could beat the king of motorsport. Enzo Ferrari never spoke to Ferruccio again. He refused to even acknowledge his existence. But the silence was an admission of defeat. Ferruccio eventually retired to his vineyard, drinking wine and watching his bulls. He died in 1993, but his legacy lives on. Today, every time you see a Lamborghini Aventador or Revuelto screaming down the street, remember one thing: it doesn't exist because of passion. It exists because of spite. It exists because one arrogant man refused to listen to a customer. So, the next time someone tells you that you aren't good enough, or that you should stick to what you know, remember the tractor driver. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting angry. It's building an empire that makes your enemy irrelevant. If you enjoyed this incredible story of rivalry and success, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Magnate Files. We have more stories of the elite coming soon.